Hey guys, tonight we wander into a world of muted lantern glow and the quiet rustle of silk, where shadows dance along lacquered hallways in Kyoto's Gion district. You step into the warm pulse of a late summer evening, and the scent of incense curls around your senses like a slow lullaby. You hear the soft click of wooden sandals on polished planks, the faint murmur of voices behind sliding screens, and the almost imperceptible hum of secrets carried on the night breeze. You think you're settling in for a simple tea ceremony, but trust me, you're about to discover layers you never knew existed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If you're joining from somewhere far away, drop your location and local time in the chat so we can time travel together. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey through history together. As darkness deepens across Edo-era alleyways, you slip behind a delicate silk screen painted with cranes and chrysanthemums. The paper whispers as you push it aside, and suddenly you're enveloped in a hush heavier than the summer heat outside. Warm lantern light pools across low reed mats, and the scent of burning cedarwood mingles with the sweet hint of plum blossoms in your cup. You inhale deeply, sensing that this evening will reveal secrets hidden behind painted facades. You're not in a typical tea house. You're stepping into a covert universe where geishas reign as both celebrated artists and carefully guarded enigmas. By the mid-1700s, geishas had become central to Edo's entertainment districts, entertaining samurai, merchants, and nobles alike with dance, music, and conversation. Their status was so high that wealthy patrons would pay fortunes for a single evening of shared laughter and whispered poetry. But don't let the romanticized tales fool you. This world hides undercurrents that could shatter illusions in an instant. Your fingers graze the smooth wood of a low table, imagining the weight of a lacquered tea bowl in your palms. You notice how the tea bowl's rim is slightly uneven, a subtle imperfection that tells you it was handcrafted by a skilled artisan. The tea itself is whisked into a frothy emerald swirl, so bitter it jolts your taste buds awake, yet so silky it lingers like a whispered secret. Around you, a guest gently taps a lacquered tray, signaling for more hot water, while another delicately holds a fan, its paper stretched taut over bamboo. The ambient noise fades, the occasional murmur becomes distant, replaced by the soft thrum of anticipation. The geisha stepping toward you wears a kimono so intricately patterned that it's like a moving tapestry, gold thread forming swirling waves and cherry blossoms that flutter with every step. Her face is a canvas of white powder, jet black brows arched like brush strokes, and lips painted a deep crimson resembling a drop of blood on freshly fallen snow. You almost taste the sweet bitterness of matcha tea as she offers you a cup, her motion slow and deliberate like a sacred ritual, but let's not romanticize everything you see. That calm exterior is fiercely maintained, requiring hours of practice and layers of rules. Behind those painted smiles, geishas endured relentless scrutiny and competition. Some fringe accounts even claim that select geishas carried tiny poison-dipped hairpins concealed in their coiffures, just in case a patron got too handsy. Historians still debate the veracity of these tales. But they certainly raise an eyebrow. You shift and notice a single bare foot peeking beneath the kimono, a reminder that these artists trained barefoot for hours, perfecting every posture. The first note of a shamisen cuts through the hush, drawing every eye in the room toward a young geisha's dance. That instrument's 3 strings produce a tone so pure it can slice through conversation. You imagine what it took to master such skill, years of waking before dawn to practice finger placements, memorizing dozens of traditional songs, and perfecting every sway until it felt second nature. It's clear why geishas were revered, and why some fell prey to envy and intrigue behind the scenes. Your gaze drifts to a painted fusuma screen depicting a storm at sea, turbulent waves crashing against jagged rocks. The lantern's glow transforms the painted sea into a living tempest, each brushstroke flickering like flame. You feel a tingle of anticipation. Beneath every artful performance simmers currents of ambition, heartbreak, and unspoken truths. Rumor has it that some geishas kept secret notebooks filled with poems mocking their patrons, quiet rebellions that could destroy a reputation. It's a reminder that beneath every silk screen resides a world of fragments, half-spoken vows, and longing. As you sit cross-legged on the tatami, you notice every detail, the grain of the polished floorboards, the faint halo of light around each lantern, and the soft rustle of silk kimonos as geishas glide from room to room. A slight tremor runs through you as a geisha locks eyes with you. Her smile warm but distant, like she knows secrets you're not ready for. You want to thank her for this intimate invitation, but centuries of etiquette hold your tongue. Instead, you sit in stillness, letting your senses drink in the atmosphere. You might think geishas lived only for serene beauty, untouched by hardship. In reality, most began training as children, sold or apprenticed by families seeking any escape from poverty. They slept in cramped quarters above teahouses, rose before dawn to practice dance and music, and endured rigorous lessons until every gesture was flawless. Their debts to okiya owners bound them for years, making freedom as fleeting as a dragonfly's shadow. Yet despite these challenges, many geishas forged careers with a resolve as strong as tempered steel. Tonight, you're a silent witness to this world, drinking in every detail behind silk screens. You feel the gentle thrum of a taiko drum echoing from somewhere, a heartbeat reminding you that you're alive in this moment of hushed spectacle. Maybe you catch a glimpse of a geisha quietly slipping a protective charm into her sleeve, a reminder that even here, superstition and folklore intertwine with skill and elegance. You lean back, letting your eyelids grow heavy as the lantern light dances across your vision, so as you settle into this landscape, remember that you're not just here to watch, you're here to feel. Let the soft cadence of my voice lull you, but keep your senses open, because tonight, we'll unravel the silken shadows and discover the true pulse of Edo-Era geishas, artisans, survivors, and icons of a bygone era. You haven't moved, but time bends around you. The flickering lanterns fade into a soft morning haze as your mind drifts backward, deeper into the past. Now, you're standing in the cramped courtyard of a modest Edo-Era home, somewhere in the bustling heart of the Yoshiwara district. The air is still, but not silent. Behind every wooden wall, life stirs, sharp and unsentimental. Children chase after delivery men carrying bundles of rice straw and plum vinegar. Roosters crow, though the sun's barely nudged the horizon. You're here to witness the birth of something that, centuries later, still captures the world's imagination, the geisha. But surprise, it didn't start with painted faces and choreographed dances. Not at all. In the beginning, the geisha world was shaped not by women, but by men, yeah. You didn't mishear that. The earliest geisha, called taikamochi, were male entertainers. They were like a mashup of stand-up comics, party planners, and historical storytellers, all rolled into one dramatically gesturing, fan-flipping package. They amused elite guests with anecdotes, wit, and musical talent. Kind of like that one theater kid from high school who insisted on narrating the entire field trip only in silk robes and with centuries more Polish, but around the mid-18th century, something shifted. Women began entering the profession, often under the term onageisha or female geisha. And by the late 1700s, they had eclipsed their male counterparts in popularity, style, and skill. You feel the ripple of that cultural change under your feet, as though the tatami beneath you remembers when the tables turned, when the artistry of women began to redefine the whole industry. You watch as a mother leads her daughter, no older than 7, through the side gate of an okiya, a geisha house. The girl stumbles, oversized jita clunking against the stones. Her hair is still loose, her kimono too large, sleeves dragging like forgotten prayers. The okiya owner, a stern woman with sharp eyes and a calculating smile, greets them. A few quiet words pass. Maybe a handshake. Maybe just a knowing glance. And then the mother leaves, her back straight, her pace unhurried, though her eyes never meet yours. That girl has just entered the geisha system, likely for life. It's not a glamorous audition. No applause. No excited cheering from a panel of judges. Just the creak of a sliding door and the rustle of debts being settled in advance. Geisha culture didn't bloom in a vacuum. It rose from a rich blend of artistic traditions, class structures, and social need. With the Tokugawa shogunate keeping strict order across Japan, entertainment became one of the few sanctioned releases from the rigid codes of samurai life. and the pleasure districts, licensed areas like Yoshiwara in Edo, Shimabara in Kyoto, and Shinmachi in Osaka became epicenters of this sanctioned indulgence. But let's be clear, geishas were not courtesans. They worked alongside them, yes, sometimes even shared patrons, but their roles were fundamentally different. While Oiran were high-ranking prostitutes known for their elaborate hair and ceremonial parades, geishas were entertainers focused on music, dance, and conversation. Confusing the two was like mistaking an orchestra conductor for a lounge singer in a seedy bar, technically both in music, but worlds apart. Still, that line blurred often, and depending on who you ask, intentionally so. Fringe anecdotes hint that some okiya deliberately trained girls in flirtation as well as art, not for full transactions, but to walk the razor's edge of suggestion. An eyebrow raised just so, a sleeve tugged with the right amount of hesitation, these were the invisible threads of allure woven into every performance. You step into the okiya's rear room and feel the difference immediately. No lavish decor here. Just woven mats, 2 futons rolled neatly, and a battered shamisen leaning in the corner like an exhausted relative. This is where young trainees, shikomi, slept after hours of chores. Their day? Wake at dawn. Clean the house. Heat the bath water. Practice walking correctly. Then observe older geisha as they prepared for evening performances. No improvisation allowed. Every movement was memorized, rehearsed, evaluated, and if they messed up, some were sent home in disgrace. Others endured another year of silent endurance. Advancement came only with grit, talent, and the approval of their seniors. You didn't just decide to be a geisha, you earned it, and even then, it might never fully be yours. You catch sight of an older wanisan, a senior geisha, teaching her maiko apprentice how to bow. Not just any bow, but the bow, one with a precise 3-second pause, eyes down, fingers spread just so. It's a ritual, and if the apprentice's wrist angles are even slightly off, the lesson starts again. Over and over. The humility wasn't just for show, it was survival. Reputation in this world was as fragile as porcelain and just as unforgiving. Outside, a courier rushes past, carrying rolls of fine Kyoto silk for a kimono fitting. Each roll worth more than a farmer's yearly earnings. You wonder who foots the bill. Spoiler, not the geisha. From day one, everything, the fabric, the instruments, the tutors, even the hair oil, is bought on credit by the okiya. And you know what that means. Debt. The golden leash, even if a young girl eventually debuted as a maiko, a junior geisha, she was far from free. Every lesson she took, every hairpin she wore, every dumpling she nibbled during breaks was added to her growing tab. It's like getting your dream job and finding out you also have to pay rent in back-breaking monthly installments to your boss. Yay, still, despite the pressure, there was beauty. So much beauty. Imagine your senses flooded nightly with fragrant incense, haunting music, and laughter echoing down quiet canals. The geisha world might have been born of necessity, but it transformed into a surreal, floating realm where time slowed and every gesture carried history. That's the contradiction you carry with you now, how something so delicate was built on a foundation of bone-deep endurance. You blink, and the moment shifts. The little girl you saw earlier is now practicing her calligraphy, brush trembling slightly as she etches kanji into rice paper. She's already changed. You see it in the slope of her shoulders. She hasn't even danced yet, but her journey is underway, stitched into every thread of her future kimono. So remember this origin story as we move forward. Behind every painted face you'll meet tonight lies a beginning shaped by sacrifice, structure, and silent ambition. No one is born into silk and song, they learn, stumble, and perform their way there. You don't even realize it at first, but something in the room has shifted. The lantern light seems dimmer, softer. The air feels denser, as if filled with invisible threads of tension. You've now entered a new phase of the geisha's life, the apprenticeship years. And it's here, in the precise folds of a kimono, the silent grace of a tea offering, that the true transformation begins. You're about to witness how a girl becomes a geisha. Or rather, how a maiko becomes an artist. There's no direct translation for maiko, it loosely means dancing child, but that doesn't do it justice. This isn't some cutesy phase. It's a brutal blend of rigorous tradition and exquisite presentation. Think of it as the boot camp of elegance. And now you're standing in the dressing room of a Kyoto okiya as a maiko begins her daily transformation, something between an art installation and a slow-motion survival exercise. She's young, maybe 15. Her hair is natural, not a wig like older geishas wear, and it's being sculpted into the iconic Weshinobu style, a massive, sculptural swirl held up with combs, pins, and enough wax to survive a typhoon. You wince as her scalps tug tight. But she doesn't complain. She hasn't complained in months. This is part of the performance. Even when no one's watching, the hair will stay untouched for a full week. Yes, you heard that right. A full week. She'll sleep on a curved wooden pillow designed to keep her elaborate hairdo intact. Try that with your memory foam. The fringe detail? Every night, a house assistant checks her pillow for stray hairs. If she's careless and a pin comes loose, there's no shouting. Just quiet disappointment. Which is somehow worse. Next comes the makeup. White foundation, thick and chalky, covers her face and neck. But not completely. There's a deliberate W-shaped patch of bare skin at the nape of her neck, called the ariashi. It's considered sensuous, mysterious. Kind of like leaving a book open to the most provocative page, but just out of reach. The eyebrows are darkened, the eyes outlined in red and black, evoking both youth and the stylized beauty of ukiyo-e woodblock prints. Her lips? Only partially painted red, the lower lip filled in completely while the top is left mostly bare, another mark of her apprentice status, and then, the kimono. You watch the room's senior dresser step forward, arms full of silk. This isn't your average bathrobe situation. A maiko's kimono is a 20-pound tapestry of seasonal motifs, padded hems, and hidden meanings. Every sleeve length, every embroidered crane or maple leaf, signals something, her age, her status, even the time of year. It takes two people to dress her, tugging, folding, tying the massive obi sash into a trailing knot that falls nearly to her ankles. Fashion, here, is storytelling through geometry and restraint, but beauty has rules. And maiko follow all of them. How to sit. How to walk with knees slightly bent and toes inward. How to cover your mouth when you laugh. You try copying the walk, heels barely lifting, steps no longer than a grain of rice, and nearly topple over. That's when it hits you, the poise you admire from a distance. It's rehearsed like a soldier's drill. Even lifting a teacup is choreographed. Tonight's the maiko's debut at a tea house down the street. It's called a misadashi, a formal introduction to the world. You accompany her, quiet as a ghost, as she walks in okobo sandals nearly 5 inches high, each step a tiny act of defiance against gravity and logic. Passers-by bow respectfully. Some pause to watch her pass, whispering admiration. She doesn't flinch. Doesn't smile too widely. That would be unseemly. You arrive at the okiya, literally, a tea house, though the tea here is secondary. Inside, guests await. Wealthy patrons. Businessmen. Retired samurai. The room is warm with sake and anticipation. You watch as the maiko takes her place beside her senior wani-san, the older geisha who's been mentoring her. She pours drinks with both hands, offers polite small talk, then performs a dance, slow, exacting, emotional. Not flashy, not seductive. Something in her expression, a softness around the eyes, a controlled blink, holds the audience in rapt silence. Afterward, the men applaud gently, more out of respect than excitement. The performance wasn't meant to entertain in a flashy way, it was meant to resonate. To haunt. You realize then, being a geisha isn't about standing out. It's about disappearing into the craft so completely that you become the art itself. One of the guests, a merchant, drunk and red-faced, tries to touch her sleeve. Just the sleeve. She gently withdraws, her smile unfaltering. The one-san subtly shifts to block him. It's all done in silence. A ripple in the fabric of the evening, smooth before it can become a tear. You blink, and it's like it never happened. But you remember, after the guests leave, the geishas remain to gather their things. The Miko sinks to her knees, exhaustion creeping into her features now that no one's watching. She's too young for this, you think. But also, not. She's already survived the hardest parts of training. And this world? It doesn't slow down for sentiment. Back at the okiya, she climbs the narrow stairs to her room. Removes her sandals. Washes her face. A little too roughly, as if she's trying to scrub away not just the makeup but the pressure. She lowers herself onto the wooden headrest, adjusting her neck just so. A paper screen slides shut, and with it, the light from the hallway fades. You sit quietly outside her room, listening to the stillness, and just when you think she's asleep, you hear a faint sound, a hum. She's singing. Probably a folk tune. You don't understand the words, but the feeling, loneliness braided with hope, is universal. By now you've seen enough to know that nothing about this path is accidental. Every step of the transformation from girl to geisha is designed to strip away the ordinary. To create someone unforgettable. Someone refined, elegant, untouchable, and yet heartbreakingly human. And just when you're tempted to think of the Miko as delicate or frail, remember, she's walking the tightrope of tradition, expectation, and debt with every carefully measured step. And she's doing it in 5-inch heels. The morning returns without drama, no fanfare, no applause. Just the quiet rustle of sleeves and the muted shuffle of feet on tatami. You're still in the okiya, but the energy has shifted again. Now, it's not about first steps or wide-eyed wonder. Now, it's repetition. Refinement. Welcome to the daily rituals of a working geisha. It's not glamorous. Let's just get that out of the way. No one's reclining on velvet cushions, sipping imported champagne. Instead, you're watching our Miko-turned geisha rise before the sun even considers clocking in. She's older now, maybe 19, and every movement she makes has that practiced grace you only get from years of rehearsing how to exist under scrutiny. Her morning starts with tea. Not sipping it, serving it. But not to clients. To her house mother, the Oka-san. A ritual of respect. You watch her kneel, hand steady as she slides the cup forward. One motion too quick or uneven, and it'll be noted. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is accidental. After that, she practices. Again. Even if she's performed the same dance for a decade, she still rehearses. Her shamisen is worn smooth where her fingers strike the strings. Her calligraphy is precise, but never quite perfect. There's always something to refine. You sit beside her, listening to the lilting melody she plucks from those 3 strings. It's not just music. It's muscle memory with emotion baked in. Once breakfast is cleared, she begins the long, slow process of becoming the image again, the flawless, otherworldly figure guests expect. But she's not alone. Another geisha assists her with the layers. They talk in low voices, the kind of shorthand only women who've survived the same furnace of expectations can share. Their laughter is dry, lived in, and strangely comforting. Here's the thing, most outsiders assume geisha only work at night. Not quite. The days are filled with bookings too. Private lessons. Cultural showcases. Afternoon tea sessions with tourists hoping for a sanitized brush with authentic Japan. You follow her to one such event, a garden party hosted by a retired diplomat. It's tasteful. Ornate. Painfully polite, the geisha bows. Serves tea. Demonstrates a fan dance. tells a seasonal story with her usual quiet confidence. You notice how the guests look at her, not like a performer, but like a relic. A moving antique. One even whispers, it's like stepping back in time, as if she weren't a living, breathing person with bills to pay and joints that probably ache. Later, as she changes back into a plainer kimono, she mutters, back in time would mean no plumbing. Then snorts. You laugh too, quietly, of course. Some parts of her training stuck. But that glimpse of personality, the unvarnished spark beneath the paint? That's rare. And it hits you, the mask might be seamless, but it still covers a real person underneath. As the sun drops toward the tiled rooftops, the pace changes. A geisha's true shift begins in twilight. You follow her to the Hanamachi, the flower town, where the Okaya tea houses flicker to life. She's booked for 3 engagements tonight, each one a delicate waltz of entertainment and etiquette. Think speed dating with stricter rules and way better outfits. First stop, a gathering of mid-level bureaucrats. They're polite, slightly dull, and overly interested in sake. She plays a round of Tesenkyo, a fan-throwing game that's part skill, part flirtation. The guests cheer when she wins. She lets them win the next one. Everyone laughs. It's choreographed fun, but it works. Next, a private room above a sake brewery. A birthday celebration for a frequent client. This one's trickier, he's sentimental, unpredictable. She handles him like glass, gently, but always aware of the cracks. She plays the shamisen, sings an old enka tune, and makes just enough eye contact to suggest intimacy without promising it. The client leans in too close. She smiles and excuses herself to refill the sake. Crisis averted. Finally, a high-stakes event, a gathering of kabuki actors and elite patrons. Here, the pressure is different. She's not just entertaining, she's representing her house. One misstep could cost her Okiya future bookings. You watch her switch gears effortlessly. Her jokes are sharper. Her posture more formal. Her dance, when requested, is impossibly elegant, her arms telling stories older than anyone in the room, and all through it, she drinks nothing. Eats nothing. She's the one pouring, the one laughing, the one adjusting the mood with a change in tone or an arch of her eyebrow. When she finally leaves, hours later, she's starving. And still smiling, back at the Okiya, she removes her wig with a soft groan and rubs the red lines the obi left on her skin. You sit nearby as she downs a bowl of noodles in record time. She looks over at you, noodle still halfway in her mouth, and says with absolute deadpan, so elegant, right? And you know it's a joke. But you also know she is. Not because of the makeup, or the costume, or even the grace. But because she pulled off a 12-hour marathon of emotional labor and made it look effortless. That's the secret no one tells you. Geisha work is performance layered on performance. A soft shield of charm, hiding muscle memory, exhaustion, and a hyper-awareness of everything happening in the room. It's not just art, it's endurance disguised as art. And somewhere in that contradiction of beauty built on grit, of silence full of power, you start to understand why people still revere geishas. Not as relics, but as survivors. You're starting to feel the rhythm of this life now. Not just the events themselves, the tea, the dances, the whispered laughter, but the layers beneath them. And just as you settle into the idea that the geisha's path is all elegance and repetition, something shifts again. This section? It's about what happens when all the hard work starts to pay off. When she becomes the draw, the star of her district, but first, some honesty. You're watching a woman who has mastered her art, yes, but also mastered her own myth. She's in her mid-20s now, which in geisha years is somewhere between established and iconic. Clients book her months in advance. Her name is known across multiple hanamachi. She walks down the street and apprentices bow in her wake. You watch one Maiko nearly trip over her okobo just trying to perform the perfect greeting. The transformation is striking. Not just in posture or paint, but in presence. She no longer hesitates before speaking. Her jokes land every time. She's learned when to step forward and when to step back, letting silence do the talking. It's charisma curated down to the flick of her sleeve. Tonight, she's heading to an elite okaya, invite only, no signs, no tourists. The guest list includes an Osaka industrialist, a kabuki actor with scandalous rumors trailing him like a perfume, and an elderly politician whose power hasn't faded nearly as much as his hairline. You wouldn't expect these men to hang out in the same room. But for her? They show up. They lean forward. They laugh too loudly at her clever innuendo. She dances, of course, but it's the conversation they remember. The way she threads personal detail into metaphor, the way she tells a 13th century ghost story and somehow makes it about real estate speculation. One of the men asks her why she never married. She smiles, sips her tea, and replies, "I already belong to 5 districts." Isn't that commitment enough? You can't help but notice the difference in how she's treated now. The younger geisha pour the drinks. She receives them. The host of the okaya bows slightly lower when addressing her. Even the room's air seems to shift to accommodate her, like a gentle orbit forms wherever she stands, but being popular has its own weight. She's booked nearly every night, often twice. Her schedule is so tightly packed that one cancelled booking ripples through 5 other commitments. There's no calling in sick. No personal days. When she has a cough, she layers her kimono with extra silk to keep warm and doubles down on green tea and pickled plums. The show must go on, even when it's just her in front of a 2-person crowd in a quiet tatami room. Still, there's pride. And money. The fees she now commands are significant, not just in yen, but in favors, influence, connections. She's accumulated enough to start paying down the debts to her okiya. Yes, those still exist. Remember back in section 2, when we talked about the cost of training? That wasn't charity. It was an investment. And she's been repaying it night after night. Now, she's close to a rare milestone, independence. If she pays off the full amount, she can choose to go freelance, what's called jimai. It means owning her own name, her own bookings, her own kimono wardrobe. No longer tethered to the house, she becomes a solo act. Some geisha never reach this point. Some don't even try. But she wants it. Still, freedom doesn't mean ease. Independent geisha have to juggle everything: scheduling, training, finances, public image. There's no house mother to shield them from drunk clients or last-minute emergencies. But for her? That risk is worth it. You catch a glimpse of her at her accountant's home. Yes, even geisha need accountants, going over numbers with sharp eyes and sharper questions. She's not just an artist now. She's a businesswoman. A brand. Every piece of silk she buys is an investment in her legacy, and yet, with all this control comes isolation. Historians still debate whether the most famous geisha of Edo-era Japan were truly empowered artists or simply highly trained entertainers within a gilded cage. It's not a simple answer. Because for every woman who made it big, there were dozens who burned out, faded, or fell from favor with one bad season. You see her stare into the mirror one evening, fingers paused above her eyeliner brush. Something flickers across her face, not regret, not sorrow, but a quiet accounting. A self-check. You wonder how often she has to remind herself that she chose this life, even if she didn't choose all the terms, but she pulls herself together. Finishes the makeup. Adjusts her obi knot with a confident tug. And when she steps into the hallway, she's radiant again. Later that night, over sake with a trusted patron who's more friend than client, she shares a secret. She started teaching. Just a few lessons a week. Dance, shamisen, and the between-the-lines parts of being geisha, the stuff no manual explains. Someone taught me, she says. Now I owe the same. That's when it hits you. This isn't just a career. It's a cycle. A lineage. And she's already begun the next turn, So while her name rings through the flower towns now, you understand something deeper. The applause may be louder, but the stage hasn't changed. She's still walking that same tightrope, only now, with a crowd watching from both sides, waiting to see if she falls or flies. You wake to the creak of bamboo in the wind, and somewhere beyond the shoji screens, the soft tapping of jita on stone. It's late morning, and for once, your geisha is not preparing for a night of laughter and sake. She's up early for something far more delicate, a visit to her patrons, not clients. Patrons, there's a subtle difference, but here in the Hanamachi, the difference could fill a library. Patrons don't just attend performances or share a joke across lacquerware. They invest, protect, occasionally control. And they come with layers. Power, affection, danger, and always strings. She wraps herself in a formal tome-sewed kimono, black silk with subdued crests. It's not for seduction. It's for diplomacy. Today she's visiting one of her oldest dana, an older man, influential, generous, and complicated. Let's rewind a bit. The dana system, especially in Edo-era Japan, was an institution of its own. A geisha might acquire a patron not just for financial security, but for prestige. Some relationships remained strictly professional. Others slipped quietly into romance, or convenience, or unspoken contracts. Historians still debate whether these arrangements liberated geisha from poverty or subtly enslaved them to a single benefactor's whims. The answer, like most things, lies in the middle. You watch her enter the villa, her pace serene but alert. The dana is waiting, silver hair, gold ring, and a cup already in hand. He's not leering. Not tonight. In fact, he seems almost wistful. They talk about nothing, plum blossoms, kabuki schedules, the rise in rice taxes. But the way he watches her, it's not lust. It's possession. He offers her a box, lacquered, heavy, expensive. Inside? A comb. Tortoiseshell, inlaid with mother of pearl. Beautiful. Traditional. Suffocating, she thanks him, as expected. Places the box on the floor with slow reverence. Smiles. But you catch her thumb flicking the edge of her obi. A tick. Her tell. Once outside, she sighs, barely audible, and murmurs, "Now I owe him a performance next month." Not a night of pleasure. A literal performance. A dance requested, scheduled, and paid for in advance. That's the line she walks with him. And she walks it well, but not all dana are distant. Some are messy. You've heard whispers around the okiya, another geisha entangled with a former samurai-turned-merchant, another whose patron vanished after an embezzlement scandal, leaving her bankrupt overnight. That's the game. High reward, high risk. Later that week, your geisha receives a letter, delivered by hand, wrapped in silk. It's from a potential new dana, younger, flashier, arrogant in a way only inherited money allows. She reads it once, chuckles, and tosses it into the fire brazier. Too pretty to trust, she mutters, not all support is worth accepting. Still, being favored by patrons has its perks. She has a custom kimono in her colors now, crimson and storm cloud gray, with her personal motif embroidered on the hem, a crane mid-flight. Symbol of longevity and grace. It was a gift. From which dana? She never says. You join her at a riverside engagement that evening. The scene is practically cinematic, lanterns reflecting on the water, the scent of grilled eel wafting through the air. But your geisha isn't just there to perform. She's there to be seen. Among the guests are two noble families quietly eyeing her for possible endorsement. And in this world, reputation travels faster than sound. She dances. Not the energetic, flirtatious style you've seen before. This is something older. Slower. A courtly piece from the Genroku era. You watch the audience still as stone, holding their breath through each precise step. And when she finishes, there's a pause, then the applause, it's earned. Backstage, The host bows deeply. You honor us. And he means it. Her name has weight now. Her presence legitimizes the event. She's not merely an entertainer. She's a stamp of prestige. But with recognition comes scrutiny. A guest makes an offhand joke about a famous geisha who's getting a little long in the tooth. She doesn't flinch. Later, back in the okiya, she laughs and says, "Better a long tooth than no bite." Then pours herself tea and hums a tune that probably predates all of them. The younger geisha watch her with wide eyes. Some are intimidated. Some envious. One asks to carry her shamisen. She agrees, but says nothing more. After everyone's gone, you find her writing, carefully brushing kanji on parchment. A note, a poem, maybe just practice. You ask if it's for a client, she smiles faintly. It's for me. That's what they don't tell you, the higher she climbs. The more solitude follows. It's not sadness, exactly. More like the quiet air at the peak of a mountain. Beautiful. Still. And just a little lonely, and yet she keeps climbing, because here, in the Hanamachi, there's always another level. Another performance. Another fan to open, and then gently close. The light filters in through paper shoji panels, turning everything soft and gold, like a painting that never quite dries. Today's quieter. No grand engagements. No silk-wrapped gifts. Just the slow, deliberate rhythm of the geisha house when no one is watching. But this is no vacation, this is a maintenance day. You trail her down a side street to a building barely marked. Inside, it smells of camellia oil and heated fabric. This is her kimono dresser's workshop, an unassuming little place where one of the most complex wardrobes in human history gets untangled, pressed, and prepped for the next performance. You've seen her in dazzling layers, but now? Everything's off, hung up. Aired out, inspected for damage. The kimono alone is a 6-piece ordeal, not including the underlayers or that architectural obi that needs its own support system and a small miracle. The dresser mutters about moths. She replies with a joke about hiring a cat as backup security. They spread one kimono across a tatami mat, ink dark silk, with a scene of snowy cranes and pine trees stitched in silver. She fingers a frayed edge near the collar. That's from the summer festival, she says. Too much twirling. You remember it, too, that night under the fireworks, that too loud client who insisted she perform twice in a row. Glamorous on the outside, but this is the wear and tear. Maintaining these garments costs a fortune. The dyes alone could feed a family for weeks. And they aren't just pretty, they're symbolic. Every color, every sleeve length, even the placement of the pattern says something about her status, her season, her mood. She doesn't pick them to match her shoes. She picks them like a chess master chooses pieces. Later, back at the okiya, it's hair day. Her hair isn't a wig, it's her real hair, sculpted into a shape that could rival a temple roof. The hairdresser is part stylist, part engineer. She sits for hours while wax is melted, strand smoothed, pin set. The smell of camphor fills the room, and by the end, her head is heavy, but perfect. The hairstyle isn't just tradition, it's a language. Maiko wear one type. Senior geisha wear another. A specific knot might signal mourning, celebration, even availability, though that last one's more legend than lore. Still, the message is read by everyone in the know. You ask if she's ever wanted to cut it all off. She laughs. Once. During rainy season. But then I remembered, I'd have to wear wigs. And wigs itch. The personal upkeep never stops. She has her teeth cleaned with charcoal powder. Her face shaved by a professional to keep the white makeup flawless. Calluses on her feet get sanded down, even though no one ever sees them. If I don't feel like a geisha all the way down to my heels, she says, the spell breaks. Spell. That's what it is, really. An illusion built one ritual at a time. Even her walk, the slow, gliding shuffle that looks so graceful, is a practiced deception. It's not natural. It's the result of years of training, deliberate balance, and tight leg muscles. And those beautiful Jita? Not comfortable. Not even close. Today, after the last kimonos pressed and the hairs pinned high and the teas brewed just right, she sits by the garden, cross-legged on the veranda, watching koi drift beneath floating cherry petals. And for a moment, the glamour drops. She's just there. Woman, not symbol. Then the bell rings. A client's arrived early. Without missing a beat, she rises, adjusts her collar, and that transformation begins again. You recognize it now. The posture straightening. The shift in tone. The smile that's genuine, but measured. It's not fake, it's filtered. Refined. Polished. The guest is low-ranking, new money, judging by the shoes, and he bows too clumsily to make much of an impression. But she treats him as if he's an ambassador. Serves him tea. Listens to his clumsy compliments. When he asks if being a geisha is fun, she tilts her head and replies, it's more fulfilling than fun. Like keeping a very old clock ticking. She doesn't say that sometimes the gears bite back. After he leaves, she closes the door and exhales. The house mother chuckles from behind a screen. He's young. He'll learn. She nods, then heads to her room. Not to rest. To write thank you notes, because in her world, gratitude isn't a feeling. It's a performance. A calligraphy stroke. A gesture of longevity. You spot one last kimono in her closet, one she hasn't worn in months. Dusty pink, with plum blossoms and tiny foxes stitched along the hem. That was my debut piece, she says, running a hand over the fabric. Wore it the night I danced at the Lantern Festival. You can tell she keeps it like some people keep childhood drawings. Not because it's useful now, but because it reminds her who she was, and what it took to become who she is. Funny thing is, the more you see behind the scenes, the more the mystique deepens. Not because it's perfect, but because of all the imperfect things it hides so well. The frayed seams. The sore muscles. The quiet doubts brushed away with red lipstick and a painted fan. You think you understand now, every bow. Every gesture. Every detail. It's not about impressing guests, it's about holding the spell together for just one more night. Night again. But this isn't the flickering candlelight of tea houses or the hush of polished tatami. Tonight, the hanamachi hums with a different current. Not serene, restless. Something is brewing just beneath the silk and smoke. Your geisha is quiet as she applies her makeup, but her hands move faster than usual. The brush glides across her face, painting that iconic white mask, the porcelain contrast that turns her into something mythic. But tonight, there's tension in her jaw. You can feel it in the air, even if she says nothing. Tonight's gathering isn't just a party. It's a kai, a private event hosted by a wealthy merchant with political connections, where multiple geisha from rival Okiya will be performing. Drinking, and, whether anyone admits it, competing. It's not war. Not officially. But it's something close, as she slips on her performance kimono, storm gray silk with blood orange chrysanthemums. You watch the transformation take hold. Not just the elegance. The armor. This isn't the warm charm she wears with loyal clients or the teasing which she offers debutantes. This is calculated brilliance. She's about to walk into a room full of enemies with a smile. You arrive at the event, and it's already glowing with lanterns and lacquer. The scent of sandalwood, grilled fish, and ambition fills the air. Men in expensive robes hover near the entry. Some laugh too loudly. Some don't smile at all. Everyone's watching. She enters like fog, slow, graceful, impossible to ignore. Heads turn. You follow her in and catch another geisha, equally poised, flash the smallest flicker of narrowed eyes. The tension is thick enough to chew. You remember, this one's from the Tsunohazu district. Talented, sharp-tongued, famously favored by a regional governor. She once publicly recited a poem that insulted 3 rivals in a single haiku. Elegant? Yes. Dangerous? Absolutely. Tonight, she and your geisha are paired for the drinking game, Compera Fune Fune, the deceptively silly rhythm match played over a bowl. Fast hands, perfect timing, subtle taunts. It looks innocent from the outside, but if you've watched closely enough, you know this is a duel, and your geisha. She doesn't blink. Doesn't flinch. Her timing is flawless. The slap of palm to table, the quick switch, the rise in tempo. Her rival smiles, tight, a little too sweet. She fumbles. Just once. Enough. The room erupts with polite laughter and clapping fans. You swear you hear the house mother from your okiya mutter, "That's my girl." But the night's not over. Not by a long stretch, one of the guests. A minor noble with too much money and too little sense challenges the geisha to a poetry duel. Improvised. Rhymed. In classical meter. The kind of stunt that can make or break a reputation if you're just half a syllable off. She accepts with a bow that's exactly deep enough to be respectful and exactly shallow enough to say this will be easy. Her poem, about a koi fish who's tired of swimming in circles and decides to leap the gate, only to discover it was guarding a garden, not a trap. A metaphor, surely. About herself. About them. About all of it. The room pauses, then roars. Even her rival raises a fan to hide a smile. Backstage, later, she collapses onto a cushion and exhales like she's been holding her breath all night. "I think my ribs vibrated," she says. Her hands are trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of keeping the illusion intact for so long. You ask if she's nervous about what the other geisha will say. She shrugs. Let them talk. That's the point. If they're talking about me, they're not replacing me. That's the darker side of Hanamachi politics. Alliances are fluid. Gossip flows faster than sake. And the moment your name slips out of fashion, so do your bookings. One bad performance, one clumsy bow, and suddenly the younger geisha are being invited instead, so she stays sharp. Always, still, there's a cost. A few weeks ago, a rising Maiko in the okiya next door was suddenly sent to the countryside. No explanation. Just gone. Some say she offended a patron. Others whisper she challenged the wrong senior geisha. Historians still argue how much of this inner competition was encouraged by okiya owners and how much simply evolved. Like a garden growing too thick with ivy, your geisha pours herself a cup of tea in the moonlight. You notice her fingers are stained faintly red, dye from the silk of her obi. Proof of the night's effort. "I was good tonight," she says softly. Not boastful. Just factual. She doesn't ask for praise. She doesn't need it. She only needs to know she's still relevant, still respected, still seen. The rival geisha passes by on her way out. They exchange bows, precisely measured, perfectly respectful. You'd think they were old friends if you didn't know better, but then, she murmurs, barely audible, "Let's do this again sometime." Your geisha smiles. I was about to say the same. Back at the okiya, the house is quiet. Everyone's asleep, or pretending to be. She brushes out her hair herself. Too tired for formalities. The pins clatter softly into a dish like falling coins. You ask if it was worth it, everything she poured into one night of posturing and performance. She glances at you through the mirror, eyes still lined in kohl, mouth unpainted now but curved in a way that says more than words. Of course it was, she whispers, because in this world, fame is as fleeting as a blossom on the wind, and you only bloom if they remember you tomorrow. The morning after always comes too soon. A breeze slips through the half-open shoji screen, carrying the scent of damp earth and plum blossoms. Your geisha stirs, stretching limbs sore from hours in stiff silk, muscles remembering each practiced smile, each carefully measured step. She doesn't rise like a normal person. It's more of a glide. Even now, In this quiet moment, everything is ritual, the night's glamour is gone. Her face, bare. Her hair, loosely tied. You see someone not often revealed, the offstage version of her life, fragile but composed. You sit with her on the veranda as she sips warm rice porridge and slowly chews pickled daikon. It's the breakfast of someone who knows her body is a tool. Fuel it well. Don't tempt indigestion. No dramatic armlets or iced coffee here, you ask what the day holds. She sighs. Training. Always training. And just like that, you're walking with her again, this time to the back wing of the okiya, quiet, cool, sacred. This is where the young ones are shaped. The mirrored room. The calligraphy mats. The shamisen rack that hums like a beehive when you pass. She greets the shisho, the stern teacher who rarely smiles and always smells faintly of sandalwood. Today, your geisha isn't the lead. She's the mentor. A senior performer helping the newer girls sharpen their grace. You watch as she corrects a maiko's fan movement. Too wide. Again. Then adjusts another's bow. Slower, with intent. If you don't believe it, neither will they. The girls adore her. They watch every flick of her wrist, every blink, like it's gospel, but behind their admiration, there's a tinge of something else, ambition. After all, she stands where they want to be. And only so many top clients. Only so many legendary performances. The hanamachi might wear its hierarchy in embroidered crests and formal tea ceremonies, but make no mistake, it's survival of the most graceful. After drills, they take turns practicing the shamisen. You're not surprised that your geisha plays like she's coaxing secrets out of the strings. What surprises you is how she glares at herself when she misses a note. Perfection isn't a preference. It's the baseline. Once the training wraps, she excuses herself for errands. But they're not shopping trips, not really. She visits her incense maker first, a tiny shop tucked behind a shrine. The old man behind the counter knows her by scent. New blend for summer? He asks. She nods. A blend of amber, yuzu peel, and a whisper of cedar. Next, her calligrapher. She doesn't just write thank you notes, she commissions seasonal verses, jokes. Flirtations, all rendered in her handwriting so elegant it's practically a personality. The calligrapher gives her a scroll with a smirk. This one might make the rice broker blush. She grins. That's the idea. Her last stop? A tiny tea house, quiet and shaded. She kneels beside an older woman with a face like a wrinkled fan, her former mentor. They sip tea in silence at first. Then the conversation turns to the usual, clients aging, new competition rising, and the health of the okiya's matron, who's been coughing too much lately. Do you ever miss it? Your geisha asks, the elder lifts one painted eyebrow. Miss it? No. But I do remember it like a flavor you once craved. Rich. Spicy, a little too much. They laugh. But later, your geisha confides, she walked away before she was pushed. That's rare. Because not every geisha gets to choose when the curtains close. Back at the okiya, preparations begin again. Not for another performance, but for a rare guest, an okiya inspector. A bureaucrat from the district council, sent to ensure the house maintains its license, its books, and its reputation. You'd think they'd just check records and leave. But no, this is Edo-Era Japan. Everything is formal. Everything is theater. The house is scrubbed. Scrolls are rehung. Even the koi in the garden pond are fed special pellets so they'll look more lively. Your geisha dons a simpler kimono, not too flashy, not too plain. Respectful but not submissive. It's a look that says, we uphold tradition, but we're not afraid to be noticed. The inspector arrives, a pinched man with ink-stained fingers and the faint air of someone who's never been entertained in his life. He reviews the okiya's logbooks, scans through the guest registry, and even sniffs a bottle of sake like he's judging a competition. your geisha offers him tea. He accepts without eye contact. She makes small talk, casual yet calculated, like a cat circling a sleeping dog. He finally cracks a smile, not much, but enough. The visit concludes with a bow and a stamped approval slip. The house is safe. For now, honestly, she mutters after he leaves, I'd rather dance on a tightrope. You believe her. The stakes are the same later that evening, as the lanterns flicker on and the city resumes its slow, glittering rhythm. You sit beside her on the veranda again. She pulls out a folded letter, a request from a client in another district. A tempting offer. Travel. Prestige. Money, but also distance. Risk. Unfamiliar politics. She holds it between her fingers like it's made of fire. Maybe, she murmurs. Maybe it's time. You don't answer. Because you know this isn't a decision made lightly. Leaving one hanamachi for another is like changing your soul's accent. And not everyone is welcome back. She tucks the letter away. Not today. Not yet, because while there's still applause to earn and rivals to outshine, she's not ready to vanish into memory, not when she still owns the room. A strange hush settles over the hanamachi tonight. Even the wind seems more cautious, rustling bamboo leaves like it's trying not to wake anyone. You feel it in your chest, that quiet before something shifts. Change, creeping in like ink into rice paper, your geisha stands by the window, hands tucked into her sleeves, watching the night. She hasn't said much today. But her silence isn't emptiness, it's calculation. Earlier, she received a second letter. Another offer. Same distant district, but this time from a different patron. A better one. A silk merchant with connections to Kyoto's imperial court. The sort of patron who can rewrite the course of a geisha's life. She folds the letter carefully. Almost too carefully. Historians still debate, she mutters to herself, how much autonomy a geisha truly had. And you realize, that's not just commentary. That's the tightrope she walks. Every decision appears hers, but each step is laced with invisible threads, okiya debts, client expectations, unspoken obligations. You recall when she first arrived here, barely more than a girl, clinging to a small travel bag and a bundle of rehearsed bows. Now, she's the top geisha in the house. But top is a place with no walls, just a ledge and wind. She sighs. We should walk. You follow her down the moonlit alleys, past shuttered tea shops and sleeping cats curled beside offering bowls. The hanamachi without its glamour looks older, a little tired. And so does she. At the edge of the district, she pauses by a stone bridge. Below, the water glimmers like spilled lacquer. She begins telling you about a geisha named Kikunome who once danced so beautifully during a typhoon that her audience wept. They say she tied her obi in reverse that night, on purpose, as a protest against her patron who tried to buy her freedom. Did it work? You ask, she chuckles. Depends who you ask. The patron left. The okiya got fined. But Kiku? She's remembered. You both sit in silence for a while, lulled by the gentle sound of water and distant temple bells. She opens up, softly, slowly, about the weight she's carried all these years. The constant calibration of every word, every look. The fear that one misstep will erase years of perfect performance. You don't just age here, she says. You erode. Piece by piece. There's bitterness, yes. But not regret. She chose this life, even if the choosing had limits. Back at the okiya, the other girls are rehearsing. Through the paper walls, you hear laughter, a snapped shamisen string, a clumsy fall followed by a chorus of giggles. Your geisha listens with a tilted head. They're not ready yet, she says softly. But her eyes say something else. They will be, and soon, later that night, a courier arrives. Another letter. This one isn't folded in soft paper with delicate brushstrokes. It's blunt, sealed in red ink. A summons from the district council. Apparently, an elder patron has filed a complaint. Favoritism, It reads, "Inappropriate conduct." Vague, but serious, she laughs, sharp and brief. So he's upset I refused him again. It's not the first time this has happened. Geisha live in a world balanced on courtesy and implication. To refuse too plainly is to humiliate. To hint too delicately is to be misunderstood. The line between self-respect and insult is thinner than a kimono's lining. She'll have to attend the hearing in 2 days. Apologize without apologizing. Defend without accusing. Dance her way through an invisible minefield. You ask if she's afraid. She doesn't answer right away. I'm exhausted, she admits, not from dancing or late nights or aching joints. From the diplomacy. The endless decoding of what people say versus what they mean. From being a living symbol while also trying to be a person, the next day is quiet. No appointments, no rehearsals. Just waiting. She prepares herself for the council visit. Not in defiance. Not in fear. Just precision. She chooses a subdued kimono, deep navy with embroidered white cranes. Modest, dignified, and just rare enough to remind them she's still powerful. As she steps through the Okiya's gates, the house mother watches her with a look that's somewhere between pride and worry. You accompany her through the narrow streets, past the carp banners that flap lazily overhead. The council building is dull stone and dim lanterns. Bureaucracy, plain and drab, in a world of beauty. Inside, she kneels before 3 councilmen who speak in slow, careful tones. They circle the issue like cranes circling a koi pond, elegant. Deliberate, faintly ridiculous, she bows. If I caused offense, I regret it deeply. She doesn't admit fault. But she gives them just enough. One of the elders sighs and says, "You are, as always, most articulate." Another leans in. Perhaps more discretion next time. She nods, bows again, and is dismissed. Outside, she exhales. Not relief, just release. Like a paper lantern floating upward after the flame burns out, on the way home, she stops at a sweet stand and buys a tiny yokan cake. She offers you a bite. It's cloyingly sweet. "I forgot how much I hate these," she mutters. You laugh. And so does she. At the Okiya, the younger girls hover near the entrance, pretending they weren't worried. One hands her a note. It's from a new patron. Young, wealthy, and intrigued by your poetry. She smiles faintly, folds the note, and places it in her sleeve. Later that night, as she brushes her hair, she hums an old festival song. Her voice is soft, a little off-key, utterly human. You realize something. She isn't just surviving. She's mastering the slow art of fading without vanishing, and for now, that's enough. The scent of old lacquer and pine hangs in the air as morning light filters through the rice paper screens. You watch your geisha rise with practiced stillness, her body heavy yet alert, like a bow pulled taut, even at rest. Last night's hearing seems miles away, but you know it lingers in the tightness of her jaw, the faint pause before she speaks. Today is one of those rare days when she has no client to charm, no party to attend. But that doesn't mean rest. Not for someone like her. Instead, she opens a box. It's small, wooden, and wrapped in faded indigo cloth. Inside? Mementos. Personal treasures. A silver hairpin shaped like a crane. A fan signed by a Maiko she once trained. A tiny jade comb she found in Kyoto and never wore. She pulls each piece out with reverence, letting her fingers remember moments her face does not. Then she lifts a slip of paper, yellowed and creased. A poem. Handwritten in a lover's script, long gone. You don't ask. You don't need to. Some things aren't stories, they're shadows that sit beside you quietly. After she carefully returns the items, she changes into a plain cotton kimono, blue-gray, with the scent of rain. "Let's walk," she says, like it's the only cure for her mood. You follow her through the lesser-known parts of the district. Past the vegetable vendors, the ink shop, the stables that once stabled horses but now mostly shelter gossip. She nods to a former client, a retired sake brewer who now sells pickled garlic from a cart. He bows too low. She pretends not to notice. You reach the edge of the district, where the Okiya-owned world ends and something less curated begins. Children run barefoot. Stray dogs bark. Laundry hangs from second-story windows. She stops in front of a modest home with a narrow porch and a low fence of rusted iron. A woman comes to the door, wiping her hands on a dishcloth. Her face is unmistakably familiar. The same eyes. The same slant of cheekbone. Older sister, your geisha says with a bow. They haven't spoken in years. You learn quickly that not everyone in her past was left behind by choice. Her sister had chosen the path of marriage, children, domesticity. She'd once called her younger siblings' career glorified loneliness. That had been their last real conversation, but today, there's no judgment. Just tea, poured slowly, and long pauses between cautious questions. Her sister shows her a sketch one of her children made, crude, colorful, proudly scribbled. Your geisha smiles, genuinely. Then she teaches the child how to fold a crane from paper. It flutters in clumsy fingers, and something inside her softens, on the way back. She says, I almost forgot who I was before the first performance. You reply, maybe you never stopped being her. Just dressed her differently. She laughs. That's dangerously poetic. Later, back at the Okiya, the house is unusually quiet. The younger geisha are at a group lesson. The house mother is out dealing with a kimono merchant dispute. For once, your geisha has time alone in the tea room. She lights incense, her custom blend, and opens her calligraphy set. This is one of her secret pleasures. Not for clients. Not for reputation. Just the simple joy of brush against paper. She writes a haiku, wind through the silk screen, names forgotten by the dusk, but lanterns still glow. She doesn't frame it. Just folds it, presses it between the pages of a book, and moves on. That evening, a courier delivers a gift, a rare bottle of plum wine and a note sealed with gold thread. It's from a daimyo's court official, a wealthy man with a famously short attention span. The note is direct. He wants her to perform at his summer estate. Privately, she stares at it for a long time, then she does something unexpected. She takes out her brush and writes a reply, not a refusal, not an acceptance, but a riddle cloaked in elegant metaphor, something about cicadas and borrowed moons. It's her way of testing him. If he understands it, he might be worth her time. If he doesn't, well, he's just another collector looking for a prized artifact. That night, as the lanterns glow low and the tea grows tepid, she talks to you about the illusion of prestige. You know, she muses, people think being a top geisha means being desired. But really, it means being borrowed. Never owned. Never truly known. She pauses. Except by a few. There's a pause so long it becomes a rhythm. She breaks it gently. You asked me once what I would have been, had I not come here. You nod. I wanted to be a puppeteer, she says, chuckling. Ironic, isn't it? You ask if she still remembers how to make them. She smiles. Maybe I'll show you someday. When I have time. When the season slows. But you both know, the season never really slows. Not in the Hanamachi. Time here isn't measured by calendars, it's marked by festivals, patrons, performances, and silent little aches in the knees. Before you part for the night, she gives you a folded piece of calligraphy. You open it later, it's another haiku, inside silk and gold. A girl who dreamed of puppets, moves without her strings. You sleep with that image in your mind, of a woman wrapped in layers, still carrying the heartbeat of someone younger, freer, not yet named by reputation. She hasn't stopped dancing. But now, maybe, she leads the music. The heat hangs thick today, a blanket of damp silk pressing on every rooftop tile. The Hanamachi begins to slow, not from laziness, but from necessity. Summer in Edo isn't gentle. It drips from your temples, curls the edges of scrolls, and turns the scent of incense just a touch too sour. you find your geisha leaning against the ingawa, the wooden veranda that wraps around the okiya. Her sleeves are rolled back slightly, scandalously practical. She fans herself with a folding uchiwa that's seen better seasons, the paper edges frayed from years of ceremonial gestures and private frustrations. She doesn't complain about the heat. She's long since learned that discomfort is an expected part of the role. But you can tell she's not entirely present today. Something's chewing at the edge of her thoughts, and then she says it, they're replacing the Oka-san. The house mother, the woman who trained her, scolded her, covered for her, and, when no one else would, called her a genius behind closed screens. You blink. Why? She's too old now. And not shrewd enough anymore. The patrons don't fear her like they used to. There's bitterness, but also resignation. The Hanamachi doesn't reward sentiment. Loyalty is beautiful in poetry and suicidal in business. The replacement is a younger woman from Kyoto. One with a sharp voice and sharper eyes. She arrives before the end of the week. Your geisha watches as the transition begins. The new Oka-san walks the halls like she already owns the floorboards. She moves through the okiya not as a guardian, but as an investor evaluating her assets, and that's what the geisha have become, assets. She brings a different kind of order. The kind that counts coin ledgers twice and asks which girl can be retired early to make room for fresher faces. Your geisha isn't in danger of being replaced, yet. But her status now feels more like a lease than a legacy. She adjusts. Of course she does. She's nothing if not adaptive. But something in her rhythm shifts. She becomes sharper in conversation, more precise in performance. The soft edges sand down. That evening, at a teahouse gathering, she performs a classic dance, the butterfly at twilight. It's meant to be delicate, sorrowful, fluttering. But tonight, there's steel beneath the flutter. The patrons don't notice. They clap and call her ethereal. But you notice. You've seen her actual sorrow before. This isn't sorrow, it's warning. Back at the okiya, the new Oka-san invites her to tea. You follow, standing discreetly outside the sliding screen. They speak in coded tones. Compliments with jagged undersides. Praise laced with implications. The new Oka-san smiles too often. Your geisha smiles too little. Eventually, she emerges, face unreadable. She wants me to train more girls, she says flatly. Says I should pass on my techniques before I lose my edge. You ask if she'll do it, she shrugs. If I don't, she'll say I'm hoarding status. If I do, she'll say I've peaked. Catch, 22, Edo style. Still, she begins mentoring 3 younger Maiko. Each different, one graceful but dull, one clever but arrogant, one painfully shy. She teaches them the way she was taught, but with more kindness, less cane. One day, the shy one, a girl named Haina, asks her why she never left the Hanamachi. Your geisha pauses. I never had a reason strong enough to walk away, or a weakness urgent enough to be pushed. It's the closest she's come to admitting uncertainty. Over the next few weeks, her name starts appearing less on the party rosters. Not by accident. The new Oka-san is giving younger girls the spotlight. Testing the waters, you ask how she feels about it. Relieved, she says. Then adds, and furious. She starts waking earlier. Practicing again, not to reclaim a throne, but to reclaim her own rhythm. She revisits old dances. One she hasn't touched in years. The wind on cracked tiles. Evening tea beneath war drums. Pieces she once mastered in her rise but abandoned when patrons started requesting safer, prettier routines. As she moves through the forms, you see her begin to forget the room. Forget you. Just become the story. One morning, she receives a letter, not from a patron, but from a former geisha who left years ago and now runs a small performing arts school in a quieter province. The letter is simple, a request for help training a new generation, no okiya politics. No backdoor patronage. Just performance, skill, and mentorship. She keeps the letter in her sleeve for days. doesn't answer it, doesn't speak about it. But you see her touch it often. Meanwhile, rumors swirl around the hanamachi. Whispers that your geisha is losing relevance, that she's retreating, that she's becoming obsolete. She pretends not to hear, but one night, after a long soak and a longer silence, she asks you, "Would you come with me if I left?" You don't answer right away. Instead, you say, "Would you be leaving to escape or to begin again?" She looks at you, long and slow, then says, "Does it matter?" Maybe not. Later, you watch her give a lesson to Haina. They practice calligraphy, not just for skill, but to still the mind. Your geisha demonstrates a single kanji, endurance. It's the heart under a blade, she explains. That's what it means to be a geisha. But her brush hand trembles just slightly. For the first time in years, she doesn't correct the line. A soft rain begins to patter on the paper screens, the sound a gentle percussion against the quiet night. The geisha is seated by the window, the folds of her kimono pooling like spilled ink on the tatami. Outside, the district's lanterns flicker, their warm glow barely reaching this room, a small sanctuary amid the bustle. Tonight, she is preparing for a very different kind of performance. It's not for a daimyo or a wealthy merchant. It's not for the new Okasan's coveted roster or any prestigious hanamachi event. It's a private recital, held in the modest home of an aging poet she once admired, a man whose verses were as sharp as his wit, and whose company she treasured when she was just a maiko. He's ill now, bedridden but sharp as ever. His hands tremble with age, his voice is a fragile thread. He asked her to come sing for him, to bring a little grace to his fading days. She accepted without hesitation. You watch as she delicately unpacks her shamisen, the three-stringed instrument that has been her constant companion through years of performances, heartbreaks, and quiet moments like this. She tunes it carefully, the notes soft and deliberate, like breathing. The room fills with a melancholy melody that seems to fold around the poet's fragile frame. She sings old songs, folk ballads, love songs, pieces meant to soothe and to remember. Her voice is quiet but steady, each note wrapped in years of practice and emotion. It's a side of the geisha that few patrons ever glimpse, the woman beyond the silk and makeup, beyond the carefully crafted persona. Here, she's simply a storyteller, a keeper of traditions and feelings. After the performance, the poet smiles faintly and offers a small gift, a worn brush and some rice paper. "Write your own stories," he whispers, "before others write them for you." She nods, moved beyond words. Later, back at the Okiya, the atmosphere is tense. The new Okasan has heard rumors of the recital and frowns. Private performances for non-patrons are unorthodox, and she questions the loyalty of anyone who steps outside the prescribed path. But your geisha knows something deeper, that her identity isn't just tied to clients or contracts. It's tied to moments like these, fleeting, fragile, but real. She begins to carve out more space for herself, demanding small liberties, an extra hour in the morning to write, a rare day off to visit the poet's home again, a different set of songs for a private client. The new Okasan warns her, careful. Freedom in the hanamachi is a luxury, and it can be revoked as easily as it's granted. Your geisha smiles, enigmatic. Then I will treasure it while it lasts. One afternoon, you accompany her to a small temple on the outskirts of the city, a place she visits to clear her mind and remember why she began this journey. The temple's stone lanterns are moss-covered, the air thick with incense and the rustling of bamboo. She kneels before a small shrine, hands folded in silent prayer. She murmurs a wish, not for wealth or status, but for strength to face whatever comes next. On the walk back, she reveals another secret, a new project she's been quietly working on, a collection of poetry and calligraphy that blends traditional forms with her own reflections on life in the hanamachi. It's a deeply personal work, one she's hesitant to share with anyone outside a small circle of trusted friends. You ask if she plans to publish it. She shakes her head. It's not for the world. It's for me. A way to remember who I am beneath the layers. This reminds you of the haiku she wrote months ago, about the girl who dreamed of puppets. You realize now it's more than just a metaphor. It's a compass. As the days grow shorter and the rainy season deepens, your geisha's world becomes a delicate balance between duty and desire, tradition and transformation. She performs with the grace expected, but her heart beats to rhythms only she hears. One evening, as cherry blossoms begin to bloom early, she confesses a hope that someday the Hanamachi might be a place where women like her can choose their own stories, not just act out others. You smile, knowing the road is long and winding, but that hope is a flame worth carrying. For now, you watch as she bows deeply before the mirror, touches the edge of her silk collar, and steps into the light. The Hanamachi's spring air carries the scent of cherry blossoms and fresh rain, but underneath it all, you feel the undercurrent of change. You follow your geisha through winding alleyways where the laughter of children competes with the clatter of Jita sandals on cobblestones. The district is alive, yet the weight of tradition presses on every corner. Today, a new opportunity arrives in the form of a whispered invitation, a chance to perform at the residence of a rising merchant lord, a man with eyes that gleam with ambition and pockets deeper than the Sumida River. His salons are intimate, filled with poets, painters, and thinkers who hunger for new experiences. This is not the usual daimyo court with its rigid etiquette. It's a chance to step outside the prescribed roles and showcase artistry on her own terms. She prepares meticulously. The silk kimono chosen is a rare shade of midnight blue, embroidered with silver cranes that catch the light just right. Her hair is styled with exquisite precision, adorned with fresh seasonal flowers. As she steps into the lantern-lit room, the atmosphere shifts. This crowd expects more than traditional dances. They want stories, emotions, glimpses into the soul behind the performance. Your geisha delivers. She blends classic dance with improvised moments, adding subtle smiles, fleeting glances, and a voice that hints at vulnerability beneath the polish. The audience is captivated. Their applause warm but thoughtful. Afterward, the merchant lord approaches, his words layered with both praise and curiosity. He asks if she will join a new cultural circle he's forming, one that seeks to blend Edo's traditions with the restless energy of a modernizing Japan. It's tempting. It's dangerous. It's a chance to rewrite the rules. Back at the Okiya, the new Okasan hears of the performance and scolds her for stepping beyond established boundaries. The Hanamachi is not a playground for experiment, she warns. You risk everything. But your geisha feels something new, a sense of agency that pulses beneath the silk and makeup. She confides in you late one night, the moonlight soft on her face. I'm tired of being a borrowed ornament. Maybe it's time to become the artist I always wanted to be. The tension between duty and desire tightens. She begins quietly teaching her protégés not just dances, but the courage to question, to innovate, yet she's also aware of the dangers. The Hanamachi is a fragile ecosystem, and too much change could shatter it. You ask if she fears losing everything she's built. She smiles, a little wistfully. To lose the world is one thing. To lose myself is another. One afternoon, a letter arrives from the province school where the former geisha-turned-teacher waits. They ask if she will join permanently, to help shape a new generation far from Edo's pressures. It's a crossroads. Stay and fight the system, or leave and build anew. You watch her wrestle with the decision, nights spent staring at the ceiling, hands clutching the letter like a lifeline. The Hanamachi hums outside, a world both familiar and confining, and yet, as cherry petals fall softly on the street below, you realize something. Whatever path she chooses, she will walk it with the grace and resilience that define her. She turns to you one morning and says, "Maybe freedom isn't just a place. Maybe it's a state of mind." You nod, feeling the truth in her words settle between you like a quiet promise. You step into the waning dusk of modern Tokyo, where neon signs flicker in the same alleys that centuries ago were lit only by paper lanterns. You pause on a narrow street in Gion, Kyoto, though you remember this place from our first night together, cloaked in lantern glow and incense smoke. Now, the district feels different, polished to meet tourist expectations, yet still shadowed by those layers of history you've come to know so well. You watch a young woman in a simplified kimono, her hair styled in a modern chignon, guiding an eager group of tourists past a row of Okaya. Her smile is friendly, but there's a tremor in her eyes that you remember from your geisha's final seasons, something between duty and longing. She's a Maiko experience performer, a role born in the late 20th century when the world rediscovered geishas through film and travel guides. A mainstream historical fact, by the Meiji period, the number of registered geisha in Kyoto alone had peaked at over 80,000, though today there are fewer than 200 active geisha and Maiko combined in the city. Those numbers speak to a legacy that's at once vibrant and vanishing. You move past them, recalling how your geisha once trained her own apprentices, demanding precision in every bow, every note plucked on the shamisen. Now, the line between authentic performance and staged experiences blurs like watercolors running together. Visitors snap photos, mouths agape, as if they were seeing the real geisha, but this replica is part cultural preservation, part commercial spectacle. You remember her words when she explained that authenticity isn't measured by a static image but by the breath behind each movement. And yes, there's a quirky tidbit to share. In the late Edo era, some geisha secretly dabbled in early forms of Western-style hair dyes, vanishingly rare and frowned upon, creating hair hues that ranged from deep indigo to bluish-black. It was said salons discreetly offered ocean night dye so a geisha could stand out under moonlit riverside dances. Historians still argue whether these dyes were a rebellious fashion statement or simply a means of covering graying roots in an era before modern hair care. Either way, it shows how geisha culture was never as rigid as many believe. You glance up at a row of contemporary shiji screens, their paper panels replaced by glass whispers of modernity. Even here, the legacy persists. You see a high-end restaurant advertising geisha-style hospitality, promising guests authentic conversation and traditional tea service. They hire women in simplified attire to guide diners through a cultural immersion, a far cry from the years of training and discipline your geisha endured. Yet, for many visitors, this is what geisha culture means, a commodified blend of elegance and fantasy. You recall how your geisha once noted that even in her prime, some patrons had never encountered a geisha who didn't serve them sake, spreading rumors that geishas were simply paid companions. That bit of gossip has echoed for centuries. As you continue, you pass a small museum tucked between modern boutiques, a place dedicated to preserving traditional dance forms. A poster in the window shows a geisha from the 1930s in full attire, painted face contrasting against the dark backdrop. You step inside, greeted by the sweet hum of air conditioning and the subdued lighting that casts every artifact as precious. Mannequins display orphan kimonos, crimson silk embroidered with silver cranes, black silk depicting wave motifs that symbolized resilience. Under glass rests a battered shamisen once owned by a storied geisha named Katsuichi, who performed for Emperor Meiji himself. A mainstream fact whispers that during the Meiji Restoration, geishas were briefly banned from performing for high-ranking officials as part of an effort to modernize Japanese society, yet their popularity endured, and by 1890 their numbers had rebounded dramatically. That resilience is part of the lingering echo you feel pulsing through this modern exhibit. You reach a display of old calligraphy, haiku, and letters penned by geisha poets. One scroll reads, "Moonlight ghosts appear where silk once danced, songs now eavesdropped by camera phones." You gaze at those kanji and feel the weight of time. The poet's voice bleeds through, lamenting how tradition becomes a performance under unblinking lenses. You remember your geisha crafting haiku by candlelight, her brush moving with a grace that never needed applause. But not all echoes are wistful. In a corner of the museum, you spot a row of promotional posters from the 1960s, black and white images of geishas smiling for the camera, inviting international audiences to discover Japan's true elegance. They predate your geisha's early days, yet you can almost see her in one, staring out from the poster with that measured calm, offering tea to an unseen guest. That era saw a revival of geisha culture after the turmoil of World War II, as Japan sought to re-establish its identity. Yet, even then, some critics scoffed that the revival was more a marketing ploy than genuine preservation. Historians still argue whether post-war geisha culture retained its original artistic purpose or became a tourist spectacle. You leave the museum and step into a small tea house next door, drawn by the faint aroma of matcha. Inside, a contemporary geisha, dressed in a bright magenta kimono, pours tea with practiced ease, her manner polished and inviting. You sit at a low lacquered table, the thin foam of matcha shimmering under soft lantern light. As she pours, you recall how your geisha taught you the difference between a bowl that's just correct and one that's alive with intention. The difference that separates a kit-copied gesture from centuries of breath-honed ritual you taste. It's good, solid, measured, approachable. But you remember the bitter jolt of the first bowl your geisha gave you, teaching you that tea for geishas was never just a drink, it was a dance of flavors that mirrored the complexities of life. In this tea house, the performance is streamlined, no long stories, no hidden poems, just the visible beauty of color and form. For many guests, it's enough, an accessible window into a world they once imagined as permanently shrouded in mystery. You leave with a small clay tea bowl as a souvenir, its curve comfortable in your palm. The shopkeeper advises you to wash it gently by hand, no dishwashers here, he murmurs with a wink. Even in a world of convenience, tradition holds sway. You wonder if that bowl will ever truly reflect the legacy of the artisans who made it, or if it will simply become another trinket in a traveler's suitcase. Night falls again. You find yourself back at the edge of the Hanamachi, where a narrow canal glints under saffron streetlights. You notice a silhouette on the bridge, a young student sketching the reflection of a paper lantern in the water. She's perhaps 16, hair clipped back, eyes focused. As you approach, she glances up, shy, and lifts her sketchbook to reveal a rough charcoal drawing of a geisha dancing, feet barely skimming the water's edge. You crouch beside her and nod, impressed by the fluidity in her strokes. "Keep it," she says, handing you the page. "So you'll remember." You tuck the sketch into your pocket, feeling the charcoal smudge between your fingertips. The drawing is flawed, incomplete, yet it vibrates with raw truth. It reminds you of your own first attempts at capturing her image by moonlight, using words instead of charcoal. A breeze stirs, carrying cherry blossom petals that have lingered late into the season. You watch as a single petal drifts onto the canal, pirouetting before it drops into dark water. It vanishes instantly, but you remember its journey from tree to air to reflection. The geisha's legacy is like that petal, visible only for a moment before becoming part of something larger, collecting layers of meaning as time flows on. As you turn to leave, you pass a small shrine where locals have tied bits of colored cloth to a rack, each strip a wish for prosperity or healing. One cloth, pale pink with a single kanji for endurance, flutters in the nighttime wind. You think of her, how every season of her life tested that endurance, and how she passed it on to generations she trained. In this modern age, where change is the only constant, her lessons remain a whisper against the roar of progress. You step out of the Hanamachi, leaving behind the hum of conversation and click of cameras. The city beyond feels alive, urgent, electric, impatient. Yet you carry with you that charcoal sketch, the paper lantern's memory, and the faint echo of a shamason's final note. You think of her now, wherever she might be, perhaps teaching at that provincial art school, or perhaps guiding a new apprentice through the first fold of a paper crane. Her impact persists, rippling outward like the rings on the canal's surface. Historians still debate exactly how geisha influenced broader Japanese art forms, whether their refined performances shaped kabuki theater or if the political maneuvers of powerful patrons had more impact on those narrative traditions. Yet no scholarly argument can erase the fact that geishas, in their essence, preserved a tapestry of cultural intricacies, from the precise measurements of a kimono collar to the silent dialogue in a bowed head. You walk away into the night, feeling both the weight of centuries and the lightness of possibility. The legacy of Edo-Era Geishas is not locked in museum cases or staged tea ceremonies. It lives in that imperfect sketch, in the clatter of jita on cobblestones, in the petals drifting on water, and in every breath you take as you remember. Your eyelids grow heavy as you drift into the hush of memory, each breath slower, softer. You feel the warmth of lantern light now dimming at the edge of your vision, the gentle pulse of that final shamisen note echoing in your mind. Imagine the silk collar loosening, the painted lips relaxing, and the world of obligation slipping gently away, until only the quiet remains. You breathe in the scent of cherry blossoms, distant and delicate, as if they were blooming just outside your window. The rustle of silk becomes a lullaby, whispering of paper lanterns floating on still water. Let the weight of your body sink deeper into the mattress, each muscle releasing its hold, each thought softening like a brushstroke dissolving in ink. Feel the echo of ancient drums fading into the hush of cicadas singing in the night. Imagine the carefully measured steps of a geisha, now slow to a gentle shuffle you cannot see but somehow sense, one foot shifting, the other following, until both dissolve into the cool earth beneath tatami mats. Let any remnants of tension slip away as the story's last petal drifts backward across the canal, its journey complete when it touches the water and vanishes. You are here now, unhurried, unfettered, drifting on memory's current until sleep carries you beyond the shadows of silk screens and into the soft glow of tomorrow. Good night, traveler. Sweet dreams.